Hey everyone, thanks for stopping by and checking out today's video. In a previous video, I opened up this box and I pulled out a Lifan engine 125 and we put it on a stand, and I did a kind of a short tutorial on how to wire it just to get the engine to run with no lights or anything like that. Just say you've got like a little pit bike, you're putting it in and you're not concerned with lights. There's a video, if I can smart enough to figure out how to do it, I'll try and put a link in the description to that video that shows you how we did that. Well, after that video posted, I've got more than a few comments on, well, what if you want to put the engine in a bike and you do want to run lights? Well, my friends at Trail Buddy have two different harnesses that are available. They have one that is a simple harness for no turn signals, just headlight, tail light, and horn, that sort of thing. And then they've got more of a universal harness that is if you're going to run turn signals. So I thought I would follow up that first video with a couple more videos, and today we are going to concentrate on TB515. It's their simple main harness for a non-electrical start Lifan engine. And if you're going to put this in a CT70, hopefully it should just be plug and play. Now, I worked with Trail Buddy about a year and a half ago and kind of helped them walk through and design and build this harness so that it would truly be plug and play for a Lifan engine in a CT70. And that came about because they had already sold this harness, and they saw in some of my videos where I tore it all apart and got rid of the excess wires and so forth when I was putting a Lifan in a CT70 with no turn signals. And they thought, well, that's kind of silly. Rather than having to buy a harness and then tear it all apart, why don't we just design one that they don't have to do that. So that's what we're going to do. And I thought, well, what better way to show you guys how easy this actually should be is to actually just put it in a bike. So we're going to pull out a bike that I bought years ago and I've never done anything with, and that's this little blue bike right here. And that's actually an ST70, not a CT70. It's a European version. You can see it's got the turn signal stays. The fender is a little different, how it's mounted. So we're going to pull that out in a second, and we're going to throw that engine in it, and we're going to wire it up, hopefully fire it up, see how everything goes. I laid out a few parts because I'm going off of memory because it's been a while since I've touched that bike. But obviously it doesn't have an engine, so it doesn't have an exhaust. We're just going to throw a cheapy eBay exhaust on it. We will wind up drilling out some holes in the end to let it flow a little bit better. The Lifan engines are geared way too low, making first gear almost unusable. So I've got some sprockets. I don't know what size I'm going to use yet. When we get to that point, we'll throw a sprocket on. We'll need a chain. That bike over there does not have a horn button or a light switch on it, so we've got a couple new of those. This engine is a manual transmission, which that ST70 was originally a manual. And so I've got a clutch cable, 12-volt bulbs, 1157 for the tail light. I sometimes use 2357. I really not smart enough to tell you what the difference between the two are, but I have 1157 today. And then for the speedometer, it should take 1445s for the lights in the speedometer, if I remember. That bike is missing the headlight out of it. We got the bucket, but we're missing the headlight, so I got a new headlight. And I actually have a tail light, one of the cheapy eBay tail lights. What's it from? Too Fast Moto or something like that. But I think that bike might have a tail light on it, so we might not need that. Then some fuel line in case we need that. And we'll see what else we run across after we get the bike pulled out. So let me clean the table off. And, oh yeah, one other thing I was going to say. Now, Trail Buddy has other accessories to go with these harnesses. I did not buy these items. I already had these in stock, but hopefully my key switch will plug into their harness. If not, we'll have to make some modifications there. I know that there is a CDI with the engine from the last video when we opened it up, but we will need a voltage regulator for the 12 volts. So anyway, let me get the table cleaned off and dig that blue bike out. Before we start installing the Lifan engine in this bike, I thought we'd do a little walk around and just kind of point out some differences. Like I said, this is a DAX 70 export, and I find it interesting that they just use the same decal on both sides, so the wing is flying backwards on the right side of the bike. But when you put the decal on this side, well, then it's flying the correct way. And that is stock. I've had a couple other DAXs that did the exact same thing. Now, these bikes look very similar to a CT70, and this particular one has the same color and decal design as a K0, but it also has things. Let me back up. There's not a whole lot of information out there on ST70s on how to identify them and what year they are. Most people would look at this bike and say, oh, it's K0 69 through 71. And it does have some things that would go, yeah, that's correct. You know, it's got a plastic tank, but that carried into the K1s. I find it interesting. It's got the swing arm that has the enclosed brace like a CT70 K1 and later. It doesn't have a K0 style swing arm. So that makes me think, okay, this is later, this is, 72 or so later when this was made. But, yeah, they use the lower front fender. And I'm guessing that has something to do with the detachable front end. I've never actually taken the front end off of one of these. We're missing a crank up here that would have mounted in this thing. So I'm not sure if the fender is lowered to give the shaft, does it need to fall down? I'm not exactly sure how that's supposed to work to get it come loose. It's got a wiring harness that detaches, and the throttle, we don't have a throttle on this bike. So yeah, the throttle cable does something too, kind of detaches. So you can take that front end off. Like I pointed out earlier, it's got the turn signal mounts, and it also has a little bit different taillight mount where the license plate has a little extra for the turn signals back here. It doesn't have the post for the rear handbrake, which that didn't go away until what, the K3s, or what some people would call a 74. So does that put this at a 74 or later? It's hard. It's just so hard to figure out what they were. So they originally came, the DAXs had the little grab handle, and this one actually had one. You can tell where someone's previous to me has removed it, but it looks like it was on there. The other thing is interesting I noticed was even though this is missing, which tells me, if we go by CT70s, that puts it at a K3 or later, but we don't have the holes for the helmet holder, which showed up on earlier bikes, the K1. Really weird. I'm not gonna even fake it, understanding it all. I don't know much about ST70s. Obviously, we got a seat that is a little bit rough, but we're not going to clean this bike up today. All we're going to do is install that, and this is more of a video on how to do that and get the wiring. So I am going to take a few minutes and take some parts off of this, like the wiring harness that's in it and so forth. I don't think you guys really need to see that. I'm just yanking some parts off of it. And then when I'm ready to start installing these parts, well, then I'll bring you back. All right, so I've got the bike kind of stripped down. I got the wiring harness all out of it. Got the handlebars cleaned off. You know, I'm not cleaning the bike up. We're just going to build a rider today. We're not worried about aesthetics today. So first thing I think I want to do is go ahead and put the engine up in the bike. Make sure you keep your wiring harnesses back out of the way. And these Lifans and the aftermarket 12-volt engines all should be a direct bolt in for a Trail 70 or CT70 or an ST70. And just like that, we've got an engine in it. Let's get this out of the way. Let's go ahead and put our hardware on and make sure we've got the engine secure. Okay, so now looks a little more like a bike. I had taken the brake pedal off just to kind of help with the ease of getting the engine in there. So I'm going to go ahead and put it back in place. Before I do that, I think I'm going to spray it with a little lubricant just to kind of make sure it works freely. Give it a little douse. Springs out of the way. All right, hook our spring back up for our brake light switch. Yep, that might need some adjusting, but we'll worry about that later. And I might need to do some adjusting on this pedal so it doesn't scar up the engine, but we'll wait until we get the foot pegs in. Let's go ahead and put the carburetor on. And I don't have it out of the box yet, so let me gather some parts and let's get the carburetor, the intake, the carburetor, throttle, maybe, cable, get some of those things put together. Okay, before we put the carburetor on, I think I'm going to put the throttle assembly on first. Now this is just one of those cheap $10 throttle assemblies you can get off of Amazon or eBay, someplace like that. I don't think it came with the cable. I think it comes with the housing. It's got a kill button on it, wiring, and the grips. And they're like 10 or 12 bucks or something like that. They're not terribly expensive. Actually fit these bikes pretty well. I've used probably 15 or better of them. Got get that one started. Let's see if we can get the other. Keep trying to keep my head out of your way, but sorry, I got to see to get that nut up in that hole first. I'm not going to tighten it down super tight because there is some trickiness to the orientation, how this needs to be clocked to clear the brake lever. So I'm not going to tighten that down until we're ready to put the brake lever on and know that I have everything somewhat clocked in the right spot. So we'll run the throttle cable down. All right, now, a little bit of a long throttle cable I've got on this one. Oh well, it'll be fine. Let's back you up and let's put the carburetor on now. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do before I put the carburetor on is take the slide out of it without tearing it up too bad and putting it on the throttle cable. So you got to put the cap on first. Get it all the way seated down in there. We've got a little rubber on this particular one. If I can get it back off there, there's a little sealing washer there. You got a spring. Huh, I'm not familiar with this this kind of slide. I've never seen one. I don't know if you guys can see it, but that groove doesn't go all the way top. It's got a little keyhole looking thing. So I am assuming it has to go in there. Yeah, interesting. Okay. And then you can put the slide in the carburetor 180 degrees out. This little groove right here has to line up with that pin that is in the carburetor to let it slide down in there. Okay. And when you get it all put together, if you look in the back side, the slide should be all the way, the hole should be all the way filled up with the slide, which this one is. All right, let's put the intake on. The intake comes with a paper gasket and a little plastic insulator. By the shape of them, it's somewhat easy to tell where they go. The gasket goes between the engine and the intake. Getting all the holes to line up is sometimes a chore. All right, and then the little insulator goes between the intake and the carb. Now, you see that the carburetor has an O-ring on it. The intake, I should have shown you that. It does not. It's just flat aluminum. The insulator has one side that is smooth and one side has an O-ring. So you want to put on the insulator, the side with the O-ring goes against the intake, and then you put the carb on. And that way you've got O-rings up against smooth surfaces to get a good seal. And I made it. they gave you some supplied hardware, but okay, well, there's a fail. They gave us hardware, but the hardware is not long enough. This carburetor, I wonder if they anticipated the carburetor being threaded, and this one is not. It just has a through hole. And there is not enough length, the bolt doesn't have enough length to go through and to put a nut on it. So I've got to go shut you down, and I've got to find a couple bolts that are a little bit longer. Okay, so I've got the carburetor all mounted down tight. New hardware, well, new, ugly old hardware, but it worked. So now if I, oh, nice snappy throttle. That's what we want. All right, so I think next we will pull the side case off of it and check sprockets and put the chain on it and get that part of it ready. So let me move you around to this other side so you can see what we're doing on this side of the bike. So the first thing I need to do is take the side case off. Wow, they've got those on there tight. We're going to need a ratchet. Was not anticipating those being anywhere near that tight. Wow, those were, they had them on there. All right, what we got? We've got a 15 tooth. And we've got a 38 on the rear. I think we're going to swap that out and put a 16. Let's see what we've got. So I just picked these up online. Yeah, so that one's a 16. Let's go that route. So we need to gotta hold it still. Man, they really tore down on this stuff. Break it loose? Yeah, there we go. Sorry, I should have had that out and ready to go. They've got a like a Ziploc type bag. Oh no, I didn't. I thought I opened it, but I didn't. It just broke. And then it's in another bag in here. Well, fail. That's interesting. So these shafts come in two different sizes. A stock Honda engine, that's a 17 millimeter shaft. On 99% of the Lifans I've ever done, that's a 20 millimeter shaft, a bigger shaft. So I usually typically order sprockets to fit the 20 millimeter shaft. But this particular engine has a 17. So as you can see, that doesn't, that's not going to work. All right, well, we just did all that really for nothing. I guess we're going to have to put the original sprocket back on it. Let's see what else I got here. Yeah, these are all 20 millimeter. All right, so, well, put that back on there because we're going to have to run that 15 tooth for right now. So this thing with a 1538 will be geared super low, but that'll give us something to, another video for down the road on how to swap all that out. Okay, well, we're back to where we started. Let's put a chain on it. Now these sprockets and chain and everything, they come in different configurations. You want, oh my goodness. Well, they have messed us up completely. I was just getting ready to say, you want a 420, a stock Honda CT70 used a 420 pitch, I guess that is, for the, the distance between the teeth. And I might shake you a little bit here. Whoa, in too close. See how that chain doesn't fit down in there? See how we've got a gap? Well, you don't want that. You can't have that. Actually, the chain won't even fit on. So I don't know if that's a 428 or what pitch that is, but that chain will not work. So we've got to find another sprocket, a counter sprocket to put on the front of that. Let me look in my stash and see what I can find. All right, well, luckily I did have another 15, it's a 420 chain, 15T means 15 teeth, and it's got the 17 millimeter hole. So we do have a sprocket we put on there. I think the difference actually is in the thickness. You know, how thick this is. I think this is the sprocket off of the bike, and I think it's a 428, and it's thicker, and the chain won't settle down, won't fit down onto the teeth. I think it's just tapered enough and thicker, just a tiny bit thicker, that it won't go. So and that's just stuff you run into, guys, when you're working on these things. I'm fortunate enough that, you know, I do this often enough that I have parts laying around that, so, you know, if you don't, if this is your first bike that you're building, or, you know, you don't have a stash of stuff, boy, that kind of gets frustrating, because you want to ride, you want to get it done, and you don't have everything to accomplish that. You got to reorder more parts. So hopefully this chain fits down on there now. Oh yeah, that's the fit we want. So I'm sure we're going to have to shorten it just a link or two. We're already back about as far back as I would want to adjust it. Well, we're going to have to adjust it a little bit more. because I can't get it where I want it. If I go there, yeah. Hopefully there's a small amount adjustment there, because I guess I could bring it, I guess I should loosen it up and see if I can go forward first and get to that next, because I'm falling kind of halfway between, and I've got to get to the right spot. So what I got to do is loosen up these axle adjusters. And somebody has stacked washers and larger nuts on top of this one. So I got to take these axle adjusters, I got to loosen that axle up, that axle bolt up, and see if I can slide that wheel forward. Okay, get a socket. Nope, no, bigger than I thought. Well, it must be a 19. Whole thing spinning? Yeah, the whole thing's spinning on me. There we go. Okay, so we're still shoot. Stay on there. The brake stay may have it. It may be that the brake has got me and the wheel won't roll forward. I'm gonna fiddle with this for a second. I'm trying to get that wheel to go just a quarter of an inch farther, and we've got it. We've got the room to move it, so I can get that chain cut off at the right spot. This might not go well because I'm holding the phone in one hand, but I've got the, I had to loosen up the brake adjustment and the brake stay that's this arm here. Had to loosen this up to allow that all to pivot to let the wheel roll forward. And now I've got it to where if I cut this link off right here and just leave the end of this one up there, then I can put I'll have a spot to put this master link through both of those. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go back out to the shop and cut a couple links off of that, and then I'll be right back. So finally, we got our chain on. We got our master link in. You want the open end to be on the trailing side, so as the chain comes up and over, it doesn't catch anything and pop off of there. So we've got that. So engine, throttle, chain. I guess let's open up that wiring harness package and let's get the wiring harness fed through the frame so that then we can put the tank and some of those things in it. All right, so as stated earlier, we're going to use the TB515 harness. I got it at Trail Buddy, and it is $55 for that harness. So let's get the package opened up, and we will put it inside the frame. Before we feed this harness into the frame, I suppose we should probably walk through it and just kind of explain it a little bit. Now, I didn't look at any of the paperwork in their package. Let me... So yeah, the packaging comes with, you know, descriptions of what each wire is for and so forth, and you know, if you have a particular bike, those sorts of things. I didn't really look at that. It also looks like it comes with some kind of connectors. We'll figure out what those are for later. I'm just kind of winging it. Sorry, my good tripod has broken, and so I'm holding this by hand. If it gets a little shaky, I do apologize. Let's start at the back. Obviously, this is a lead that goes to the hot side of the battery. That's the negative side of the battery. You've got 3 wires here that will go out to the tail light. The brown is the tail light. The green and yellow is for the brake light. And looks like we just have a green for a ground. We have just a harness ground that'll hook just to the frame if you want, or to the battery. Probably hook that one to the frame. Then you've got a couple plug-ins. This is for your voltage regulator, and this one is for the CDI, and they are different. You can't really screw them up. So that's the very back end of the harness. As you move forward, you run into a group of wires. This is a solid green and a black and gold that will hook to your coil. And these are easily confused. This is a solid black with a green and yellow. That is for your brake light switch for your foot brake light switch. Easy to swap those up, so make sure you get those correct. Then you've got the wires that will hook into the engine, and we'll go over those when we get ready to plug those in. It also comes with a connector that has a solid green ground wire and a black and white wire. That's going to be for a kill button or a kill switch. Harness goes on up. This is for the key, and the key that I have actually does match that same plug and will work, so that's good. And it comes on up until you get to the headlight. The 2 long leads here, those are going to plug into the horn. The light green should be the horn button itself. I think, if I'm not mistaken, anything that's black is going to be hot when the key is on. The brown is to illuminate the speedometer. You got a bunch of grounds. There's a green with a red stripe. That's a neutral light indicator. All these greens are ground. This is a green and yellow. This is for the front brake switch, for if you have a front brake lever, which we won't have on this bike's. Yes, we will. I'm sorry, we don't have a rear hand brake. We do have a front brake, so this will get hooked to that. And then the yellow should be for the headlight, powered from the stator. So let's fish this thing through the frame. I've got the harness run throughout the frame, and I'm pretty impressed so far. They give you ample length on the harness to reach. Actually, this could probably be a couple inches shorter, because by the time we've got all this sticking out a couple inches out in front of the headlight, we've got plenty here that will wind up probably sticking back up in the frame. This is the kill wire from this throttle that I ran up here. And as a bonus, I've got it kind of stuffed down in there. You won't be able to see it, but in the little kit that came, the parts that came with the wiring harness was a little white connector. And that connector happened to fit right on this wire for this throttle setup I had and plug into their harness, so this kill button will work. So far, everything has just been plug and play. The red wire and the green and yellow are the original brake switch right there coming into the frame, and they plugged, instead of the red, it plugs into a black of the harness. Everything black in this harness is hot, 12 volts when the key's on. So, and then the green and yellow are all your brake lights. And then the other wires, the coil. Sorry, my filming's not all that great here. I just have the coil laying down in there for right now. See it moving down there. I don't have it mounted. It doesn't need to be mounted to get ground because it's got two wires. See, the green wire is the ground, and then that's a black and yellow wire. If you have two wires, you don't need to ground the body of the coil. Now, I'll eventually pull this bike all back apart and freshen it up, clean it up. So I'll mount the coil down there where the original coil mounted then. For right now, I'm just kind of throwing it together, and hopefully we're going to take us a ride here in a little bit. So that all plugged in the way I want it. We had ample length to run back to the tail light. And I've got the two wires, the green and yellow and the brown, plugged in back here. It actually supplies you with a, sorry, it's having a hard time focusing on too many things here. That the harness actually has a ground plug-in also, but on this particular setup, the tail light is grounded with the mounting right there. So now we've just got to plug in our CDI and our voltage regulator and stuff all this down in there. But before I do that, I'm ready to put the tank in. So I'm gonna go grab the tank and let's shove it into the frame. Got the gas tank in it. Now, because the carburetor only has one inlet, I just block off the on setting on the tank, plug that hose, and I use the reserve hose to run to the carburetor to get the most gas possible. So I've got the tank in it, I've got the seat in it. Like I said, I've got the CDI and the voltage regulator plugged in. For right now, I'm just going to set those down in there. That is would hook to the negative side of a battery. This would hook to the hot side of a battery, and I just taped up that bare end so it doesn't short against anything for right now. And we're just going to stuff all that down in the frame so we can put the seat back on it. So I think we are ready to get set up, and we will plug in the wiring here on the engine and then move up and put our clutch cable and the rest of our controls in. But let me bring my tripod around, and so I don't have to hold the camera and work with both hands and get this wiring plugged in. The wiring on this isn't this difficult. This is the harness coming, or this is the wires coming down out from the harness. The engine, this particular engine has two different harnesses. The one with this green plug is actually gear selector indicators. So if you've got a speedometer or some kind of lights that tell you what gear the engine is in, that's what this is. So it's got a green and red is the neutral. And then I'm not sure which colors are what, but then there's four other wires, one for first, second, third, and fourth. Because my harness has a green and red in here, but I don't have a good way of right now connecting them. I'm not going to hook up the neutral indicator wire, but essentially all you need to do is separate out the green and red wire from this harness and plug it into the green and red wire here, and then that will send power up to your, or actually we'll ground it out to your neutral light up in the headlight. We're just going to focus on the other wires. This other harness And hopefully this is just plug and play. So you've got a white wire in the harness and a white wire from the engine. So we're just going to plug those together. Looks like there is a yellow wire from the harness and a yellow wire from the engine. Plug those in. Blue and white wire to blue and white wire. Black and red to black and red. And then the last wire is just a ground wire, solid green to solid green. And boy, Trail Buddy made that super easy. All the plug-ins, all the connections are the right male-female orientation. Just in this particular case, my neutral indicator wire won't hook up. So get all that plugged in, and we'll just stuff it in here for right now, out of sight, out of mind. Excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. So we'll just stuff all that in there for right now. Okay, so I think off camera I may button up and put the cover on here, put the gear selector, the gear shifter on here, put the Kickstarter on, get some of that. We're not going to put an engine guard on it right now. We're not, just to run it, we don't need an engine guard. This is really more for the wiring. So let me button that stuff up, and then when we get ready to go back up to the headlight and show you the wiring on the headlight, I'll bring you guys back. I've got the bike somewhat thrown together. I put an exhaust on it. I went with a regular K0 exhaust instead of that aftermarket one because I didn't want to take the time to have to modify and do some things. I don't have foot pegs on it yet. We'll save that for its own video. I've got the handlebars set up. We are down to looking at the wiring in the headlight bucket, finishing this up, put the headlight on it, and then we're going to fire it up and see if we can't take it for a short spin. So let me get you set up in a tripod so I have both hands free, and then we'll take a look at that wiring. I know this is where a lot of guys, get frustrated and feel it's kind of a daunting task, but with this setup, it's actually pretty simple. So let's start with the headlight itself. The headlight has 3 wires, has a ground wire, the white wire is the low beam setting, and the blue wire is the high beam wire. And the reason it has a double is so that you can feed power from the high beam switch and then up to the high beam indicator light that's in the speedometer. So I don't know if you can see it or not, but I'm going to grab this group of wires which go up to the high-low switch on the handlebars. And essentially you've got a red and brown wire which gets hooked to power from the harness. The power goes up that wire to the switch and then comes back down either the blue or the white depending on where you have the switch set. So we need to get power to that switch, and that comes from the yellow wire in the harness. So they just plug together. So then power comes down. It comes, if you have it in the low beam setting, it's going to go out the white wire, which connects to the white wire of the headlight. The blue wire connects to one of the fittings in the blue wire of the headlight. And then green ground. There's a couple different color greens. Pick a dark one. The darker green is the ground. So that is your headlight. Now, the high beam setting on this particular setup, which I'm wondering if someone switched it out because that is a green and red like a neutral indicator wire, but a K0 doesn't have a neutral indicator light, which is one of the reasons I didn't hook it up down on the engine. There's only 2 light bulbs up here, one to illuminate the speedometer and one for the high beam indicator. So we're going to act like this one over here on the left is the high beam indicator. So The red wire is essentially the same as the blue wire. We're going to hook it up. All right, so power comes down the blue wire from the switch. It hits this, it goes back up. It's going to illuminate that high beam light in the speedometer, but we also need ground to that. Now here's where I had to make a jumper. Trail Buddy didn't put any ground wires. This particular wire has a female fitting, and there are no male fittings on any of the grounds. So I just made a little double male jumper wire that will go from that to one of the grounds. Okay, so now that's hooked up. This gray wire right here is the horn button. And these two wires are the horn button. One needs power and one needs to be grounded. The one that needs to be grounded is the wire that comes from the handlebar. What happens is you push that button and you're pushing down a tab that touches the handlebars and grounds it out. So the gray wire from the horn button plugs into the green wire of the horn. These are just going straight back to the horn itself. And then this red wire needs 12 volt power when the key's on, and that's what these black wires are. So that gets plugged into there. All right. These two wires over here, you have a red power one and then a green with a yellow stripe. These are the from the front brake. They're the switch that's in the brake line. So there again, red goes to a black to have 12 volt power when the key is on. And then there is a green with a yellow stripe in the harness that's going to go back to the brake light itself. But there again, we've got two female fittings. So I made another jumper. Ignore the wire colors. I just grabbed whatever I could. Is that going in there? I think that's in there. So now we have the front brake switch hooked up. So the last thing to really hook up are these two wires, which are the ones that illuminate the speedometer. You need a ground. So there should be one more ground as soon as I can find it. There it is. It's part of this double ground here. And then it needs, it goes to the brown wire. So this is a red and brown. It goes to the brown wire in the harness. So when you turn on the key, 12 volts comes up through there, illuminates that light. So there's a few wires we didn't use. This is a different type of horn setup. These would have plugged directly to a horn, but we had leads coming in. Same way with this light green, that would have been something to do with a horn button, which we didn't use. We didn't need the one power, 12 volt power black one, and then this red and green neutral indicator one, since we didn't hook it up down on the engine. I know it looks like a mess, so let's see if we can stuff all that in there without having anything short out. Anything that was black that I didn't use, I probably should have taped it off so that it doesn't touch anything. Let's see if I can get that screw out of there. Pinching anything? Don't really feel like it. Headlight bucket's kind of cracked, but we'll get the idea. All right. So that should button that all up. I'm going to open up the seat. Let me see what you guys are looking at. You're probably just looking at that headlight. Sorry, going to shake you a little bit here. Okay. I have got just a 12-volt battery charger, and I'm going to plug it in. And it's going to simulate a battery. All right, so I got power. I uncovered that. I took the tape back off of this lead so I could hook this up. Where's my green? Where's my ground? There it is. Okay, so hook our ground up. Hook our power up and hopefully not let it touch anything. So now let's turn the key on. And we've got a tail light. I don't know if you can see that came on. And I did switch the bulb in that, put a 12-volt bulb in that tail light. And hopefully when we hit a brake pedal, yeah, we get a brake light. That's I'm pushing down on the foot brake. Now I'm gonna reach up and grab the hand brake. Yeah, so both brake light switches work. You also have illumination. Can you see the light on inside the speedometer? Let's see. The only other thing that's going to work with the just the key and a battery is the horn button. Oh, we've got a sad horn. Where's he at? There he is. All right, we'll save that for another video. We can't turn on the headlight until we start the bike. Right? Yeah, headlight runs off the stator. So guess I need to shut you down and go get some fuel and see if we can't get this bad boy to start. So I'll be right back. Well, let's see what kind of leaks we have here. You guys yell, you see gas pour out. Not seeing anything yet, are you? That'll be enough, shouldn't it? Hopefully. All right, got our vent is on our cap. Set that down. Let's close that. I might go out of screen here and I might bump you. Yeah, let me get you guys out of the way. Right, let's see what you guys, push you forward a little bit. I'm gonna shake you here. Hang on. It's gonna be a bumpy ride. Well, I haven't checked spark or anything else. Oh, we're gonna have to change a tire. I thought that had air in it, but I guess it doesn't. All right. How How many kicks you think? Give it a little choke. 2? I wonder if it doesn't have a... I think her headlight had a 6-volt bulb in it. I didn't check it. I think we blew the headlight on both the high beam and the low beam as soon as it fired up. We've got a high beam indicator light. See the light down there? Watch if I turn the switch off. See the light go off. I'm looking down here. Yeah, I think Mikey forgot to check to see what kind of bulb was in the headlight. Boy, she sounds good. All right, I'm gonna shut you off, put you back in the tripod, and let's see if we can't take it for a short spin. Alright, that was fun. Guys, thanks for following along. I think we'll use this bike for doing some future videos as we finish up some touches. Obviously, we didn't do foot pegs, and we kind of half-assed a few things just to kind of get it going. But, you know, this is a bike I've had for probably over 10 years and just been sitting. I've never ridden it. So it didn't have an engine in it when I bought the thing. So pretty pleased to take 3 hours this afternoon and get the thing up and going. And so if you like it, you know, subscribe, follow along, give me a like, give me a few comments, let me know what you think. If you got any questions, you know, on the wiring or whatever, hit me up. But that's that Trail Buddy harness and a Lifan engine. And for the most part, it was plug and play. We had to put a couple of little jumpers in where connectors were different, but that may just be because, you know, of the bike. This is a DAX instead of a CT70, so maybe there was a little bit of difference there. But anyway, I had fun. Hopefully you guys did. We'll see you on the next video. Thanks.